welcome to the coverage for the FRL final round of the Late Night World Tour. The nearly 6-month journey is at an end. We've been racing on Thursday nights now for almost continuously since March the 19th, and it ends really with a battle mostly for one man, and that is Eresh, because with 6 dropped scores from your championship total, he has the opportunity to have only victories count towards his final finishing total. But he will face a challenge from Alberto Aragones representing Spain in order to be able to complete that, with Eresh having come under pressure from the Spaniard returning to the championship in the past couple of weeks. My name's Jack Prentice. I'm here to take you through it all and see if we can end this season on a high. So you'll see on the driver names on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see the name. So Alberto Aragones says Irish Frank-Ferreira, for example. But you will also see a country after there. That is because each driver has been representing a country throughout the entirety of the season. My name's Jack Prentice. I've been representing the Ivory Coast for the best part of this season, but I've stepped into the commentary box to take you, the viewer, all the way through this particular championship and its climax this week. So we can see 2 drivers, or in some cases 2 drivers representing the same country. Drivers like Paul Vidler and Adam Sharp, for example, have both been representing England, but the top driver from each nation is the only one eligible for points. So had it been a team's championship or a driver pairing championship, England would surely have won the championship. But as it is Germany who are the inaugural winners of this championship, in this late night 6-month format. Whether we do anything like this again in the future is up for debate, but it is something that has been a remarkable achievement from all at Formula Racing League. So you can see in terms of the individual championship, Eresh has obviously wrapped that up as well, because there is one on the SimGrid portal that all drivers have been scoring for. But his second place has been Adam Sharp, and he's 50 points clear of Josh Clayton representing Mauritius. Now, behind him, a bit of a dogfight, because it is on 714, Josh Clayton is only 24 points ahead of Fernando Ferreira, but he himself is only 19 points clear of Luke Prentice representing Australia in the 43 Lamborghini, with Paul Vidler in 6th, and those two have had a little bit of a rivalry, only 15 points behind Luke Prentice. Andrew Tulloch is 7th and likely to stay 7th, with myself in 8th position, likely not to score any points tonight on 652 points. But behind that, it's then Gordon Brown in the battle for 8th, ahead of Steve Caruana. Sorry, the name's got a bit there. So Steve Caruana on 571 points. Caruana, meanwhile, is in a battle with Gareth Harvey, who represents Tonga, with Gareth Harvey not likely to appear tonight, so he's got that one sewed up, with Serafino Gabino in 12th position, representing the Vatican City on 542 points. He is comfortably ahead of Christian Keller, representing Hungary, on 508 points, 34 points the gap there, with Chris Gepman representing Estonia in the Porsche car number 79 in 14th, a good 22 points behind Christian Keller. They're followed by Trevor Mendes, the ever-improving Trevor Mendes, who had an impressive double win in AM class on Sunday night in the Sunday Sprint Championship, with the final round to follow this weekend. He's 15th on 457 points, a good 76 points clear now of Cristiano Mendonça, who's had a truncated season, the Portuguese driver, with Jordan Marshall, the ever-improving Jordan Marshall, having only joined at the very start of the season in 17th position on 339 points. He missed a good chunk of the opening races in March whilst he got himself set up. Bill Pinnock, representing Jamaica, is in 18th and hasn't raced for most of the last few weeks, with then Felipe Padua, Marco Brustulli, a late addition to the championship, as well as Jose Luis Montero Gonzalez, who's back representing Spain, currently in 21st in the series, before you get down to a few drivers who haven't represented throughout the majority of this season. So 19 cars are in and ready and locked and loaded for the 10-minute qualifying session. There's a couple of differences in the format, whereas before there were 45-minute races in each of the previous 23 rounds. It's a 50-minute race with a 48-minute pit window, so you can pit as and when you want to pit, with qualifying taking the traditional format of 10 minutes with as many laps as you like, although with the times averaging for the quicker drivers, so Aresh and Aragonesis, for example, at 2 minutes and 17, 2 minutes 16 in Aragonesis' case in the BMW, there will only likely be 4 timed laps. The drivers have got to get out there, fuel up, ready, make sure that that setup is right. You can see a bit of a disparity here between all of the drivers. So you've got the usual suspects, Aragonesis, Aresh and Ferreira up at the sharp end within a second of each other, with Paul Vidler, Josh Clayton, Adam Sharp making up the next 3, before a bit of a gap there to Caruana, who's had an up-and-down season drive for Malta, but on his day has been rather excellent. Marcel Bastler, one of the newcomers in Germany's second car, there a couple of seconds behind as we do start qualifying. And qualifying now, it's 11 p.m, vastly different conditions to both free practice and the race. With it being 14 degrees, it will be a lot harder to get the tyres warmed up, so drivers will have to be prepared for that. And what is, as you can see, a slightly different pit exit to what casual viewers and indeed Formula 1 fans will be used to. That's because they use all of the Formula 1 pit lanes, so they come out of the bus stop chicane, which we'll show you a little bit later on, and instead then head towards all the way to La Source hairpin, as we do get the circuit map out of the way for the important stuff. Down towards the La Source hairpin, down the hill, through Rouge, and then back up at the top of Radion for the pit exit. So track limits here are to be respected, and you do not want to speed into the pit lane, because if you do, that is a stop-go penalty, and that means your race is effectively over, as it costs nearly 2 minutes to get through the pit lane and serve that stop-go penalty. So drivers will have to be aware. We're following Serafino Gabino as the first driver, as the second driver out on circuit. I'm going to go hop over to Paul Vidler in the Ferrari representing England. Certainly a battle for 6th position, or 5th position, the driver in 6th, with Luke Prentice in who's representing Australia for the Lamborghini car number 43. And fair to say these two have tussled a little bit on track, as we can see Luke back in the pit lane there. Those two have tussled on track a little bit, so we can expect to see two drivers very, very close in performance, and certainly willing to not willing to give an inch. As we can see now, Vidler heading towards Blanchimont. It's going to be difficult to... Okay, well that's a bit of an unusual line though, as he goes onto the grass. We'll just see if there's any damage there. It looks like he's carrying on. He hasn't stopped to pit, so no issues there as he goes through the bus stop. We're going to see if we can follow Vidler for the remainder of the lap. We're expecting this to be towards the sharp end now, as he does fire himself out of the bus stop chicane, keeps the car to the right-hand side across the line. That'll be more relevant during the lap, then angles it towards the left-hand side, because you need to brake at about 75 metres, down to 50 mile an hour for the La Source hairpin. Get the car guided in nicely and early on the power, because you can need any metre that you gain on the exit of La Source, you will gain 3 or 4 by the time you're at that coupe. You go flat out pretty much through the first part of Rouge. You need to keep the car nicely balanced for the right-hander before firing it over for the path of least resistance down Radion. We're onto the Camel Straight now. Up, up, up we climb, which means that it feels a bit slower than it actually looks. Before you're trying to spot your braking point for the Lacombe chicane. Now, let's see if he gets this right. Late on the brakes, nicely over the curb there for Paul Vidler, and then hooks it to the left-hand side before then a sharp right-hander at Malmedy, down to the downhill hairpin at Rivage. Now, very difficult, very easy to understeer because it's so downhill that you really have to get the car stuck to the inside line. Path of least resistance outside before bringing the car back to the right-hander, or back to the right-hand side for left-hander. Officially, the corner with no name, but I think it's now Ix or Brussels. Down the hill for Pouon now, needs full commitment, down a couple of gears in the GT3 car. Keep the car so hooked to the left-hand side because it's double apex, before then firing yourself out down the straight for the Fania chicane. Piff paff, it translates in English. Keep the car hooked to the right-hand side. That curb there really does hook you in, and then try and open the steering as much as possible for the left-hander before then a short, sharp burst to Stavolo. Again, downhill, so understeer could be prevalent. Keep the car Oh, has he gone over track limits? I think he has, but you need to keep the car ideally on the inside before then a flat out right-hander for the second part, Stavilo, and then it's an acceleration zone. Through a couple of mini kinks, really, before then the left-hander at Blanchimont, which we're coming up to now. Slightly ease off the throttle here, I think, before then a quick, short, sharp acceleration zone into the bus stop chicane. Now, keep the car to the left-hand side, try and hook it for the right-hander at the first apex. Don't hit the sleeping policeman, keep the car to the right-hand side, and this is going to be a fairly quick lap. Paul Vidler goes across the line, 2 minutes and 17.9, and that is a solid start there, as we've got car number 13, that's Jordan Marshall, now starting lap car number 19, just crossing the line as well. That's Serafino Gabino, 3.2 seconds off the pace. That's a warm-up for the driver representing the Vatican City, having earlier not been able to represent Italy. Car 404 is Airesh. Now, he's made a habit of turning up late and simply doing as he's done here, popping it to the top of the standings with 2 minutes 17.2 as an opening gambit. Already halfway through this qualifying session, so drivers like Fernando Ferreira and Caruana are just getting their first laps underway. They've got 2, possibly 3 laps to go, so certainly plenty to at least give them a banker and try and give them a set place on the grid. Marco Labrusciulli is another one who's shown a lot of pace recently, and the Porsche driver representing Canada, who has shown himself well on Sundays as well in the silver tier, is in 5th position. He's just ahead of Gordon Brown, who's 3.1 seconds off the pace. More of a race pace man than qualifying Gordon Brown. Certainly seems to rise up through the ranks using that experience that he's built up over the years to good effects there. So, bit of an opening gambit there for the man representing Scotland, and the driver in 8th position in the overall standings, with Chris Gedman now crossing the line ahead of Gabino to take 8th position, and that's because Josh Clayton has crossed the line representing Mauritius in 4th position, 1.7 seconds off the pace. Now I'm going to see if we can find another driver who is about to finish. I think that's Paul Vidler now coming through Blanchimont. So we're going to try and find Paul Vidler now in 2nd position. Plenty of drivers having not left the pit lane to start the lap, and I'm talking about Adam Sharp, Luke Prentice, Darren Mark Davies and Andrew Tulloch. None of them at the moment are out on circuit. Could this be a bit deliberate, because the start procedure at Spa isn't quite where the normal start line is? So where you normally associate start-finish line, as you see here, it's out of La Source and up through Eau Rouge, and it can get very, very tight, and there's often incidents there. So I wonder if that's a bit of a ploy there to stay out of the midfield and perhaps try and keep themselves out of trouble. As Darren Mark Davies blows that theory apart, at least where he's concerned, to lead the pit lane, car number 27, the Ford Mustang, who's been neutered a little bit, it must be said, around the circuit, with the latest update taking 20% of the power out of the Mustang. And he's out there now trying to see what he can do, as Paul Vidler has gone 0.2 of a second off of pole position. Caruana and Brusciulli unable to be separated. They're 1.5 seconds apiece off the pace, as they're a little bit more now because Alberto Aragonés has gone just a tenth quicker than Airesh. The Spaniard really has been taking it to Airesh in the previous couple of rounds, and the German now, who has gone so long without a challenger, might just have one at the end of the season. We do wonder what would have happened if Aragonés had have turned up or started to race earlier in the season. We're going to go to car 79. That's Chris Gedman now, who's dropped to the bottom of the standings, with Gabino now having improved up to 10th. Chris Gedman now going through the final corner with just a minute to go. So this will be his penultimate lap time. Hooks it to the inside there. That looks all smooth enough. Now the Porsche, superior traction to most, keeps the car to the right-hand side. And where's this going to put him? It puts him a second quicker and in 8th position. And that is a great lap time there for the man representing Estonia, but it's bettered immediately by Trevor Mendes. I said he'd been improving, 1.6 seconds off the pace. That seemed unthinkable at the start of the season, but credit to him, he's been giving it a go and he's been improving week on week, and there is the result there. The man in the Aston Martin, double winner in the AM class on Sunday night, which we'll mention a little bit later on, And yeah, impressive stuff there as he goes through Blanchy, as he goes through Rouge to try and have another go. Now the man sitting in 8th position. Can he find any more time? If he finds a 10th, he might jump up a whole row. We've got now car number 10 crossing the line. That is Paul Vidler, still only a couple of tenths off, with car number 13 now coming around. That is Jordan Marshall, another man who's shown steady improvement throughout the season. That's a little bit wayward. Coming out of the bus stop, I don't think that's going to improve his time too much. And no, it doesn't, but he sets himself up. He's still got time for another lap time, as I think Christian Keller has just gone up into 9th position in the car 179 Lamborghini. He has, with Ayres now lowering the pole as he does, lowering the pole time, 2 minutes 16.7 to half a second now ahead of Aragoneses. We've got now, I think, that is car 104 coming across the line. That is Aragoneses. We're going to see if we can see the response from the Spaniard. There is a response, but not enough of one. He's still 3 tenths off, and he's got to make this lap time count. Car number 12 now crossing the line. That is Marcel Basler. And what can the German do in the Ferrari? He can go 7th. That is a very good lap time from Marcel Basler. New to the championship, new to FRL, and that will do him very nicely. Thank you very much. Now we've got Chris Gebman, I think, now coming across the line. Well, not coming across the line, is he? But he is now on a lap. He's had a little bit of traffic, hasn't he, with Clayton in the Aston Martin, or maybe the Aston Martin has caught him on the lap. If so, that's a bit of a shame for Josh Clayton, because he has been showing himself to be just that little bit faster. Gebman now out of the final corner. 3 tenths gets him into the top 10. 2 tenths doesn't, and that's all he finds. He's going to start 11th at best now, with car 76 crossing the line. That is Trevor Mendes. He remains in 9th position, and Gordon Brown up into 10th position in the Lamborghini for Scotland. So Gordon Brown, who will be relying on his race pace as he often does to get himself up the order. That is Montero Gonzalez, and he goes 15th for Spain, as we wait now for Darren Mark Davies. He will cross the line in the Mustang as the last of the runners not to set a time that can. Keeps to go to the right hand side, and Davies goes 15th, and he knocks Montero down to 16th, and that is 5.2 seconds off the line. A creditable effort there from the returning Welshman and a legend of the commentary box, as we've got now Paul Vidler, who's crossed the line. He's 1 second off the pace. That's car 13 now as the next over the line. That's Marshall. Now, a bit of a poor end to the lap last time. What can the Frenchman do here? Not a lot more. 13th, 14th, because of that is Serafino Gabino up into 12th position. So Marshall very briefly at the head of row number 7. He's now going to be behind Chris Gebman on the run down to Rouge. I think that's all she wrote. Says car number 104. That's Aragoneses. He's already set his time, and he's gone quickest somewhere around the lap. So Ayres there has been challenged, and he takes just a tenth or 100th of a second off, and that from Alberto Aragoneses. 2 minutes 16.3 is really laying down a marker, isn't it, to the rest of the grid, with only Ayres really in the same postcode. So we'll run through your grid very shortly after a quick drinks break for this commentator, and we'll be able to then take you through 50 minutes of non-stop action-packed racing. So, as we can see there, so we'll take you through the grids now for the upcoming 50-minute sprint race, which is just for beer money, to use the Speedway phrase, with Alberto Aragoneses. There's no championship or results really to be decided. And on pole position, it is Alberto Aragoneses in the BMW car number 104. 3 tenths clear of Ayres in second, the dominant force throughout this 6-month season. They're ahead of Paul Vidler in the Ferrari car number 10, and he shares row 2 with Marco Limbrus-Tully, who's been a revelation really in the last couple of months or so, the Porsche driver representing Canada. Row 3 is headed by Fernando Ferreira in the 112 Mercedes, and he's just a couple of tenths quicker than Josh Clayton. Josh Clayton driving for Mauritius in the Aston Martin as ever. as another consistent season for Josh Clayton, looking to finish with a flourish here today. Row 4 is headed by Marcel Basler, the second German car in the Ferrari, car number 12. He's 3/10 faster than Steve Caruana, driving for Malta, car number 713. Row 5 is Trevor Mendes in 9th, with Gordon Brown in 10th, the fellow FRL admin who's done an awful lot of work to put this championship together, is rewarded with a berth on row 5 to finish the season. Christian Keller is in 11th on row 6, ahead of Serafina Gabino to complete the trilogy of Lamborghinis that qualified throughout the session. Chris Gebman in the car number 79 Porsche is in 13th, driving for Estonia, and he shares that row 7 with Jordan Marshall, driving the 13 Mercedes. Darren Mark Davies is 15th in the Mustang, driving for Wales, ahead of Juan Montero Gonzalez in the car number 11 McLaren. With the 3 that didn't qualify, Adam Sharp driving for England in the car 37 McLaren as the second runner-up, almost guaranteed runner-up in the championship. Luke Prentice driving for Australia in the 43 Lamborghini, and Andrew Tulloch at the back driving for Scotland in the blue car number 65 Porsche. So, 2.5 minutes to go. Now, you are allowed to change your tyres, but they're not mandatory. But you do have a mandatory fuel stop. So, that fuel stop will be 25 seconds, whether you like it or not. So, there's no real advantage to running really heavy and only putting 1 litre in, because no matter how long you're there or how much fuel you put in, you're going to be there for 25 minutes. Nor is there any advantage to run really, really light at the start, because all you're going to do is bookend yourself into an early pit stop with just 2 minutes to go. Now, at track temperature 29, it's about ideal, really, for the drivers. You don't want it to get any hotter, but 29 degrees is not a bad starting point for the drivers and the tyres and grip. So you're not going to need to do too much in the way of tyre saving. But if you're Airish, maybe you're thinking about something to try and get yourself ahead of Aragonis. It's going to be a really narrow run through Rouge and up Radion. Once you pass that, the Mustang might just have the legs on the BMW, which is no slouch, in straight line, and Aragonis will be aware of that. But behind, if you're Vidler, if you're Brustulli, if they do struggle at the start, and Brustulli in the Porsche is going to be in plump position because that car has got unmatched traction on this game, and he might well pick something up and maybe steal an early lead. When you've got Fernando Ferreira and Clayton obviously on row 3, well, maybe they could pick something up. The Aston Martin does struggle off the start, and I can say that from personal experience. But with a minute to go, all of those things are going to be running through. Maybe if you're any of the drivers at the back, like I say, Luke Prentice and in particular Andrew Tulloch were not exactly towards sharp end in practice, but I'm surprised somewhat to see Adam Sharp, who has had terrible luck, the Englishman, in the last 5 or 6 weeks. In pretty much any championship he's been, there's always been an incident, or there's always been something that's not usually been his fault. So in 17th, maybe with a couple of drivers whom he does trust, as they are all in party together, Prentice and Tulloch, maybe he feels that is the safest place for him to be in what has otherwise been a wretched few weeks for the auctionman. So 15 seconds to go before they start for the final time in the 6-month late night world tour, the mammoth by any league racing standards season of almost weekly racing. So it's been, apart from a couple of breaks, every single Thursday. You have to be in it to win it. And now, as the drivers set away for the mini formation, Aragon SS in the red and yellow 104 BMW. A lot of drivers you'll see have got the colours, the flags of their car. It's Ferreira, a notable exception in the Mercedes, number 112, but for example, Aragon says in the red and yellow BMW, as they now head down the hill, waiting for lights out. It won't be too far away, but it is further than you think, with Eresh just on the outsides it will be, and we are well away. You wouldn't see from the camera angle. Aragon says does get a good start, but Eresh is matched him stride for stride, hangs it round the outside. He'll have the inside for Radion, and Eresh, I think, has taken a lead. He has. Aragonis, though, is still just behind him, just dips in behind him, and he'll have to run up into La Coupe. A couple of cars fighting behind. I think they've all got through safely, which is good to see, as Paul Vidler now looks in and around to see if there's anything to go from behind. Aragonés says, though, meanwhile, goes round the outside at Lecombe. Can he make it stick through Malmedy? I don't think he can. And Eresh there has got the position done. So Aragonés is still going down the outside. He'll have to really be Dan Dare on the brakes to get it round the outside at Rivage. And I think he's had to concede the position he has just for the moment. They go through Brustol's corner now. We'll just see if there's any movement behind. I think Steve Caruana has got Marcel Basler a little bit further back, with Gordon Brown also further ahead in 9th position. We'll just see who's struggled a bit. Darren Mark Davies has struggled towards the back end, and Montero Gonzalez has also lost a couple of positions. Davies was 15th, has dropped all the way back. I think Trevor Mendes is another man to have hit a few problems earlier on, because he's back in 13th where he was in 9th position. But apart from that, all of the drivers look like they've got through. Chris Gedman's another man to have reversed a little bit down the field, with Jordan Marshall now up into 12th place. As we'll see now, they update all the way round into sector 2, and Chris Gedman's a man who's now gained a couple of positions, with Marshall now behind him, and Luke Prentice. It's been an impressive start for Luke Prentice. He was second last in 18th. He's already up into 13th place, so that will please the man representing Australia. Adam Sharp is another man to have gained a couple of positions. He's now 15th. As we go back towards the front, where Eresh leading the fields to complete the first lap. And he fires himself out of the first corner, out of the final corner, to cross the line for the first time under racing conditions. And it is half a second lead for Eresh now, with Aragonés and Vidler not letting the German out of their sight. Brustolli, meanwhile, is looking rearwards rather than forwards in the Porsche. He's got Fernando Ferreira and Josh Clayton for close company, with Caruana hanging on to the back of that, a second clear of Marcel Basler. Basler has Gordon Brown for company down the long acceleration zone from La Source all the way through the first sector. Have to tippy-toe it here, though, the Lamborghini, which is superior on the brakes, but not necessarily in a straight line. He's now into the slipstream of Basler. He's having a little look, isn't he? He's going to go to the inside, Gordon Brown, which will pick up when this does update. Brown now down the inside, and I think that's going to be 8th place. It's an impressive opening lap from the Scotsman, or it was, until he drops it on the brakes, and that is going to be a bit of difficulty, and that is a bit of difficulty. That's Chris Gedman, I think, has hit his stablemate there, as I think as well there's further strife for, I think, Christian Kelleher has also got a bit of damage there. So 2 Lamborghinis coming together there, as Gordon Brown now drops almost, in fact, completely to the rear of the field. There's plenty of damage on that Lamborghini, so problems there for Team Scotland, with their charge now taken up by Andrew Tulloch, who's dropped to, well, he's up into 17th. He's now having a go at 16th place. Montero Gonzalez there, the Spaniards, they're hanging it around the outside, and keeps the position around Pouon just for the moment. Trevor Mendes is another man to have hit further strife. He's dropped all the way back to 16th, with Marshall having ceded position to there'll be 14th and 15th now, won't it? But with Marshall having ceded position to both Luke Prentice and Adam Sharp in the early exchanges, flashing his lights as he does, the prolific light flasher. Is Marshall. He's up into 12th, I suspect, because Brown took with him Gabino. Gabino, he hasn't taken with him, has he? But there's a few other drivers who have hit further problems. Montero Gonzalez, another among them, with Luke Prentice up into 11th place. That's a very good opening lap, and now a bit of a gap to go into, well, once he passes Kelleher, if he passes Kelleher, which he has done, because Kelleher's gone wide at Blanchimont. And into the top 10 goes Team Australia's Luke Prentice now, with a gap ahead to Gedman of about 1.5 seconds, but Gedman himself 3.5 seconds off of the lead pack. We go up to the lead because Eresh has still got a half a second lead over Aragonés, with Paul Vidler having dropped back just a little bit. This is an important result if he can hold on to it, because Team England have had a strong strong end to the season, as Ferreira is going side by side with Brustolli through Radion. That's not going to work, but do they survive? They do. Not sure whether that was fair means or foul from Ferreira, but he'll say he was forced out there. And Josh Clayton is now behind, looking at opportunities. Brustilli's going to go to the inside, is he? He's not going to make it because he's going to be passed around the outside by Clayton. Clayton doesn't make the same mistake that Brown did. Keeps it nicely done on the brakes. The Aston Martin's so stable on the brakes, and that is 5th position from the man from the East Midlands, with Brustilli having been roughed up by a couple of more experienced drivers there. We've got further action there as Caruana is holding off the advances of Marcel Basler, who's back up into 8th position. The German, who was improved week on week since his debut at COTA just a few weeks ago. The German now having a look down the inside. De Puan, it's not going to work there, but Chris Getman now is looking at this and thinking about some lunch, isn't he? Because 3.5 seconds is not a lot of time when drivers ahead are battling, but he has got the attentions of the green and gold, or the green and yellow in this case. Luke Prentice driving for Australia now. The Lamborghini showing much better than it did in practice, so that will please the belligerent Brits there. Meanwhile, we go back to the front with Aragonis is now 4/10 of a second in that BMW behind Eresh in the Mustang. Now, Aragonis says, going to line him up. Is he out of Blanchimont? There's not really an awful lot of straight line between Blanchimont and the chicane, so it's going to have to be a really risky move, and it's not one that Aragonis says is interested in, because he does force Eresh into the rarest of things, and that's a mistake from the German driver. He doesn't quite get enough of a mistake to try and get alongside, but he is right behind him now, and he goes to the outside. Is he going to be able to do the switchback? We normally say no with Eresh, but Eresh does hold it beautifully on the inside there. Gordon Brown, meanwhile, just leaving the pit lane after the earlier strife, but he's going to come out straight in front of the lead pack, so his race is compromised there. That's what we were saying earlier about the long pit entries. Frank Ferreira is 5.5 seconds off of the back now of Vidler. He's got back, he's kept ahead, hasn't he, of Clayton, but just a second clear of Brustilli. So we were talking about the pit lane exit. Gordon Brown has come out right in the lead battle. In fact, he's dropped in just behind rather sensibly. The Glaswegian has now just got to get his head down. The Lamborghini's strong enough. He'll let Vidler go through, but there's a bit of a decent gap behind Vidler, so if he can stay with these, then his race is not over, because with the 2 minutes near on time that you spend in the pits, with the damage that Brown would have had from his earlier skirmish, it's now going to be a bit of patience there, which Scotsman is more than capable of showing. So Clayton now 0.5 second behind Ferreira, who's one of the more aggressive drivers on the grid. So Clayton knows his audience somewhat, is going to have to treat him with a bit of care. The Mercedes has got some very good straight line speed, can be a little bit ponderous in the corners, so maybe the Aston Martin might be able to catch up and force a mistake in sector 2. There is a car off, and that is Caruana, who's had a pretty meaty impact with the wall of another car, isn't he? That was just on the exit of Pouon, so that is not a slow accident. And Caruana, driving for Malta now, is towards, he's second last, isn't he? He's 17th, ahead of Montero Gonzalez and obviously the hampered Gordon Brown. So Caruana, having been racing Basler, wasn't he? Basler was looking a little bit racy going into Pouon the lap before, but I can't see anything on that car, so we'll find out exactly how that happened. But yes, the Maltese driver who has been a bit of a magnet for bad luck, Caruana, and it's another one of those days, so he'll return to the pits and he'll be back out, I would suggest, with his admin stablemate Gordon Brown to have a race for the last position on circuit at the moment. Now we've got, again, it's a 0.5 second gap between Clayton and Ferreira. The Aston Martin looks the quicker of the two, but obviously you've got a little bit of turbulence there coming off the back of Ferreira, with GT3's been very pitch sensitive. It does make a bit of a difference. I wonder if he's already playing the long game a little bit. Maybe might be thinking of a time and a place to pit. Obviously come out not straight away, because they'll probably change tyres with the nature of this circuit, but certainly within the next sort of 10 minutes or so he might be looking to make a move. Speaking of somebody looking to make a move, it's Porsche versus Lamborghini. There's 0.6 between them at the moment down the straight. Well, looks like it'll be roughly that, doesn't it? Because Luke Prentice is now bearing down on 8th place Chris Gebman. Gebman, who's skillfully got his way through the earlier chaos on lap number 1. Obviously, a little bit of contact with Brown, which was not Gebman's fault. It's not really Brown's fault once it sort of spun there. But Prentice there, having started on the back row effectively in 18th position, has moved his way through quite nicely, and is certainly looking a good bet for the top 8, which he was not confident of pre-race. He was certainly saying that he was struggling on pace there. We've got Vidler now with the fastest lap, and that is because these two won't leave each other alone. That is Aragoneses and Eresh up at the front, separated by a quarter of a second. And Vidler's looking at this thinking, well, there might be an opportunity. So, yeah, 1.4 seconds now behind the Ferrari. And if these two do keep battling, then he's certainly in prime position to capitalise on that, with Fernando Ferreira now 7 seconds behind, holding off the advances of Clayton. Meanwhile, we're looking at this from Aragones' point of view. He's certainly lining up Eresh. Eresh is going to stay to the right-hand side and cover the inside, and I think Aragones says he's not quite going to get anything done here. Now, Eresh doesn't make the same mistake as he made before, keeps it nicely held on the brakes. There's no way through there for Aragones, so it's another lap, certainly up until the Coombe chicane at the end of the first sector. Aragones is going to have to sit patiently. They've got there a car in front of them. That's Caruana, who will be just about leaving the pit lane very shortly after his earlier issues. And Aragones is there, dropping back a couple of car lengths off of the exit of La Source, which is so often the case when your apex is blocked. But he is still very close and certainly going to be within slipstream territory. Now, they've cleared any lapped traffic and cars because Caruana was in for a little while longer, and Aragones is there having a look, shaping towards the inside now. Is he going to be able to get it stopped on the brakes? He did not. Thinks better of it and slots in behind Eresh. That won't worry Eresh too much, because Eresh wasn't really on the defensive there, but Aragones is there, slots in behind for another lap, really, because there's not really going to be any overtaking opportunity up until you get towards the bus stop chicane at the end of the lap. So Aragones is there stalking now. He's in stalker mode, isn't he? And Eresh has had a few more difficulties with Aragones than he has with anybody else in this championship, so that's certainly one to watch later, with Paul Vidler still very much an interested party, isn't he? Meanwhile, Clayton and Ferreira have gotten away a little bit from Bruce Tully, who has certainly not gotten away from Basler. Basler with a bit of an alternative route through X corner, with Chris Gebman having lost out. No, he hasn't quite lost out to Luke Prentice. It says on there that he had done, but I suspect that the Lamborghini was around the outside going into the first sector beam and has had to cede position now. Luke Prentice stalking the Porsche like a shark here, with the Porsche very strong on traction, so we'll expect it to pull away perhaps out of Stabilo, but down the long acceleration zone going into the bus stop, we might see the Lamborghini come into its own, especially with how good it is on the brakes. We're going to go back to that later, although Eresh looks like he's going to hold on for another lap, doesn't he, with Aragones stalking him. These two probably the most relentless drivers on the grid in terms of not making a mistake and being right behind each other. Certainly Eresh has that certain aura when you've got in behind you in terms of forcing you into mistakes. As Aragones has got to turn the hunter into the hunted, as he has done throughout the last couple of races, with Jordan Marchal now having completed his pit stop and now into relative clear air. So the Frenchman won't be getting involved in this battle, you wouldn't have thought, and he's now out and into 17th place. We'll wait to see exactly what that does for his chances, and he's out into clear air. Clayton, meanwhile, behind Ferreira. That is half a second behind us. We're going to go back to the front, and Aragones is there in the slipstream, but not quite close enough, with Vidler still only 1.5 seconds behind. The frustrating thing for Vidler is that he's shown he's got this kind of pace throughout the season, but his results haven't backed it up, whether it's his fault or external factors. Vidler has shown himself to be a lot quicker than the fifth position that he's fighting for in the championship with Luke Prentice, who is now on the march. He did get the move done on Chris Gebman. Down the inside we go, and that is sorted. Thank you very much. Lamborghini can now get on with the rest of the race. It's got 4.5 seconds to catch up to Marcelin Bruch-Tully and Marcel Basler. These two holding each other up now, and I suspect that the Lamborghini will be on them within a couple of laps' time, with just a little bit of a look down the order as Adam Sharp now 3.5 seconds behind Chris Gebben, having finally got past Keller, and Andrew Tulloch in the Porsche, which has proven to be a little bit more difficult to drive than the Mustang that he was previously in, especially with the unique characteristics of that car. He's now in 12th, but has he got past? Don't think he has. That is Caruana behind him, isn't it? So no need to worry there. He's about 2nd behind Keller. Keller, who is hampered and looking a little bit dogged, that Lamborghini, the red, white and green chrome Lamborghini, looks very visually striking, doesn't it? And he's certainly done a good job with his paint scheme. Keller in 11th position, about a 2nd clear of Tulloch. We're going to go again towards the front battle, and Aragon says a little bit further back than he has been before, but he is only still 0.4 of a second behind Eresh, so again, very difficult to read into that, with Vidler still 1.6 seconds behind, and Josh Clayton now having fallen off the back of Ferreira just a little bit. Ferreira in the Mercedes having asserted himself on 4th position now with 34 minutes gone, or to go. So we're in there. Car number 12 is Marcel Basler. He's pitting, so he's trying to undercut Brush Tully, and the German will have to hope that his pit exit or pit entrance was good enough, otherwise that will come back to bite him. But Basler, having been a lot quicker than Brush Tully, certainly on the face of it, has now pitted, whereas Luke Prentice has had he's not been as quick as we'd have expected. The Porsche still now giving him a bit of grief, and Chris Gebben, having been expected to be dropped by Luke once he got through, the Lamborghini looked an awful lot faster, and now Gebben is having a bit of a fight back now. They're side by side almost through Radion. The Porsche follows in the Lamborghini's slipstream, so to speak, and the Porsche now going around the outside. Is he going to be able to get it stopped on the brakes? Don't think he is. Luke is in the Lamborghini and stops that, and make sure to balance the rear ends there with a couple of little insurance brakes, I think it's fair to say, on the apex, and he holds on through Lecombs and into the middle sector now. Interesting to see if the Porsche does finally let him go, but Gebben there, given as good as he got, wasn't he, in the fight for what is now 7th on the road. Basler obviously in the pit lane, as we're going to go once again. There's a bit of contact, isn't there? That is Serafino Cabino, and who's he in battle with? That is once again Steve Caruana in the Ferrari car number 713, and who else is that? That's Darren Mark Davies also in strife with Marcel Basler still in the pits from before, so Darren Mark Davies having a porter pits there to fix the damage. Cabino is carrying on. It doesn't really look like that's a good idea. That car looks like it's going no further, certainly not without porting, Harry Potter style, with Caruana once again in the wars. Yeah, it's been a bit of a feast or famine season for the Maltese driver, and there is another example of that, with that car pretty much ruined. I think he may well be better off ported to pits, but there is nobody around him in terms of any leaders, so he's not going to get involved in that fight if he can just cruise it back to the pit lane. But that Ferrari looks almost completely destroyed, doesn't it? And as he shakes, rattles and rolls his way round Rivage, going to go back to the front now, with Chris Gebben having dropped off the back of Luke Prentice in the battle for 7th place. So we're going to go to the front there with Aragonis now 0.7 of a second behind Eresh. Eresh can stretch his lead out a little bit, can't he? But he hasn't got much of pace advantage, as he certainly, with Aragonis, is certainly able to reel him in down the straight. There is Adam Sharp now coming into the pits. He was starting to catch up to the battle for 7th between Prentice and Gebben, and he's out well clear of Christian Keller. So I've got to say, yeah, he gains 0.3 of a second down in the first sector, doesn't he? But it's this twisty bit here where the BMW can't really do an awful lot. It's not really a handling car anyway. With the Mustang having been lightened for its power reduction, it's a little bit more useful in the middle sector. So Eresh, they're getting a lot of good work done in the middle sector, and Aragonis says they're still stalking with nearly just over 2/3 of this race to go. 30 minutes left to go, 20 minutes gone, so just under 2/3 of this race left to go. And I think it's going to be a race-long battle, isn't it, between Aragonis and Eresh, with Tulloch and Sharp both in the pits from their respective positions. So certainly a little bit of movement, and we'll see exactly how that shakes out, with Sharp just about leaving the pit lane now. So you think how far around the lap these two were when he came in, It just shows you exactly how long that pit lane is, with Tulloch now also on his way. Jordan Marshall has crossed the line. No, he hasn't yet. Car number 713 hobbling his way down. That is the yellow flag, or the white flag car that you can see there, and that is going to be pulling into the pits and possibly boxing for retirement, with Aaron Mark Davies and Serafino Gabino also in the wars. Speaking of in the wars, and that is the grip of first position that Erish has, with Aragonis looking down the inside now, outbrakes himself just a little bit. I wonder if the BMW might come in for a bit of strategy, see if he can get a bit of clear air, because he's had a couple of goes at him going into the final chicane with close but no die. Erish, meanwhile, holding on gamely for the lead, half a second clear, and the BMW's body language, the car's body language, looking a little bit more aggressive than the Ford. So I suspect Aragonis is going to decide to keep fighting this for a little while longer, see if he can pass him on track. But if he doesn't, I fancy he might try and get him in the pits in the next couple of laps. Through Rouge they go, have to keep it as flat as he possibly can. Over Radley on straight lines that. Is he going to give himself a good enough run to get past? I don't think he is. And Eresh could settle in for another lap, or certainly another middle sector of leading the race, with two cars out in front, Marshall and Tulloch a little bit further ahead. That might go into these drivers' thinking, because no matter how cooperative the lapped cars are, you don't want to be meeting lapped cars if you are in the lead. So Aragonis is there, might just have the advantage in terms of if he does decide to undercut, but he's got to time it right. And with Marshall and Tulloch only about 4 or 5 seconds ahead, that time is not now. With Luke Prentice having pitted as well, he's allowed Chris Gebben back up into 7th for the moment, and the Australian representative looking to cover off the advances of Adam Sharp in the McLaren car. 37 now currently in 12th position, and we'll see how that shakes out a little bit later on. We've got Trevor Mendes now up into 9th position with a healthy lead over Montero Gonzalez, but it's been a little bit of an anonymous start to the race there for Trevor Mendes, as he's been a lot quicker, certainly in the practice and qualifying sessions, than what his race pace has been. I don't know whether there's been any issues, but Mauritius driver can count on a very successful opening couple of seasons in certain quarters, and opening mammoth season in this one, and he's certainly improved month upon month, so he can be rather pleased with this, and it's another consistent showman, even if he's not shown the pace that he had earlier on. We're going to go back to the lead, because guess what? Aragonis is looking at the lead on Eresh, once again going into the final chicane. He goes round the outside, doesn't force a mistake there for Eresh, gets held up a little bit on the exit, and then loses a little bit more time on the exit of the final corner. Now Eresh moves straight over to the left hand side, breaks the toe a little bit, and Aragonis has a look but doesn't stare, going into the first corner at last source. And here we go again. So we'll follow this now down the hill, as Aragonis now tries to line up a slipstream down the hill and through Rouge. Now, is he going to be able to follow the Mustang through Rouge? Looks like he is, and that car looks a little bit closer than it has done for some considerable time now. We're over and past Razion. We're on the curve down up towards Lecumbe. He's going round the outside, Aragonis says. He's going to have to be brilliant on the brakes in order to get this done. Round the outside he goes, and I fancy he's got him now. Blocks the exit for Eresh. Eresh leaves him enough room, but he's going to have the high ground through Malmedy, and Aragonis says there has to cut back, and he is going to cut back down the inside, but Eresh covers that off going into Rivage, and it's a long way around a downhill hairpin, but he's going to try it, isn't he? Aragonis says if he can just block the exit enough to have the inside for Brussels, which he isn't, because Eresh squeezes him out firmly but fairly, and that is probably the closest that Aragonis has come. He was officially leading, but that's just because of the way that ACC works. He is very much in second position, with Eresh there holding on manfully, but we're nearly halfway through. I wonder which of these is going to pit, with lapsed traffic about to become a factor as they go through Fania chicane now to complete the second sector. And I suspect there with on lap 11 that one of these two may head for the pit lane, with a gap now started to open up to Paul Vidler behind. So 1.5 tenths separates the leading two drivers and the leading lights of this championship for the previous 5 or 6 weeks. And in the case of Eresh, if he wins today, he will take maximum points available from the championship. So round the outside goes Aragonis. He's going to have another go, isn't he? This time I think he might be a bit closer, but Eresh just about goes long on the brakes, but Eresh now comes into the pit lane, so he's had enough of that. Now this is the chance for Aragonis to get gone. If he can build up a bit of a lead, if he can certainly deploy that extra pace, although he has got that traffic ahead, then he might be able to overcut Eresh. Eresh having pitted now and trundling down the pit lane at about 30 miles an hour for the next 2 minutes effectively is not going to be what the doctor ordered there. But with Fernando Ferreira also in, there's not going to be an awful lot of cars for him to come back out into. I suspect that he may clear Montero Gonzalez. Will he? No, he won't. Well, he's not likely to. Car number 11 right around the back. He might well clear him, but I suspect probably not with Luke Prentice there, only now heading into Rivage as the next car behind. Prentice, meanwhile, is side by side with Adam Sharp. So Adam Sharp has gained time. Has he gained position? The Englishman there now all over the man from Suffolk, although he is representing Australia for the purposes of this championship. Now the McLaren not the strongest in the straight line, the Lamborghini not the strongest in the straight line, but it does have an advantage on brakes. The McLaren possibly a bit quicker everywhere else, and Sharp has shown himself to be a bit faster throughout the majority of the season. Can he turn that into anything substantial now through the middle sector? Not at this moment in time. He's going to have to set him up really going through Blanchimont and into the final corner. If he can certainly catch the Lamborghini napping, it's a tall order, but Sharp now on the exit of Stavolo. It's just an acceleration zone. The Lamborghini runs a little bit wide, doesn't he, Luke Prentice? But nothing to concern him too much, or track limits too much, I wouldn't have thought. In the slipstream he goes, and Sharp now having a little look, isn't he, through Blanchimont. Not going to get anything there, but it's more of a setup zone going into the final corner, and he's a lot quicker, isn't he? He goes to the outside. Luke's going to make him work for it around the outside there, and the Lamborghini gets it stopped just about, and Sharp there keeps 12th just for the moment as a few more cars pit. Chris Gedman having stopped. Now this could be pretty important because Chris Gedman was in combat with both of these two drivers. Have these drivers lost time fighting among themselves? We don't know. It might well be that the Scotsman representing Estonia hasn't taken task. We'll see that very shortly, although I don't think he's going to get out ahead with Prentice and Sharp coming through Rouge now. So they both gain that position with Gedman having lost out to the pair of them. You can see just coming out the pits there. Now over the curbs, over Radion goes Sharp, with Sharp now in the slipstream, having a little look. He'll have to go around the outside because the Lamborghini's covered off the inside pretty quickly, and Sharp now round the outside, very, very late on the brakes, and I fancy he's got him. Luke leaves him racing room, but has the high ground once again going into Rivage. Now Sharp's going to have to get the cutback done. He can't because Luke stopped on the apex there, and now side by side around the Rivage hairpin they go. That's not going to work because the downhill nature of that corner means that understeer is a necessity. There's going to be no grip around the outside there. Easy for me to say. Adam Sharp has to settle once again for 9th place with more drivers in the pits ahead. So that's Vidler, Brush-Tully and Clayton and Keller are all in. So we'll start to see how this is going to shake out pretty soon, with Eresh currently listed as 6th position. I fancy that might be a little bit, well, that should be ahead actually, yeah, because that's sorted itself out. Eresh pitted a couple of laps ago, with Aragonis now going long. We'll try and see if we can get the lap times. Aragonis, meanwhile, 2 minutes 17.8 was the previous lap for him and Eresh. Now we're going to see whether that works out in his favour, because Eresh is going to be crossing the line now, so we'll get a firm representation there from the German, and that is, if we can go back, that hasn't worked at all, is it? So that we can go back now with Vidler, Clayton and Brush-Tully also in the pit, so he'll gain all of those and he'll be at least second. We go back now to Eresh having gone round 3 minutes 44, but let's see what the pace is like from the Mustang. We'll get a bit of a better idea. He's got past Vidler. How much time has he kept in relation to Vidler, though? I suspect that he's actually gained probably about half a second looking at that. It looks like it might be 4 or 5 seconds. We're going to go back to the battle for what is 8th position. Side by side going into last source as Luke Prentice tries to get it stopped on the apex. He's just about done so, and Sharp, having tried to cut back on the exit, is going to have to settle for another slipstream run and another go around the outside, most likely at Lecombe. With these two nose to tail through Rouge, it's not going to end well if they make contact, but they don't. Sharp is made of better stuff than that, and Luke Prentice now has to go to the inside, I fear, because Sharp in that McLaren is certainly showing himself to be a bit quicker. Prentice there covers the outside, and Sharp there not able to do anything with that. That might prove to be a bit of a benefit to him, because it means he might be able to pick a better line through Malmedy, the right-hander here, with them negotiating Lecombe quite well. And no, but Luke Prentice does hold on to 6th position now for the remainder of the lap, you would feel, because the McLaren, good as it is, and Sharp, as good as he is going to find it difficult to pass the most belligerent driver on this grid in Luke Prentice for 6th position. It's been an impressive rise from these two, with Sharp starting in 17th and Prentice starting 18th, I do believe. It was certainly that way round, wasn't it, with him and with those two, with Tulloch, who has not quite made the ground up in 11th place driver for Scotland, but the Porsche there has proven to be a little bit more difficult, and he has met Jordan Marshall throughout most of this race. Aragonés says, meanwhile, has pitted, so we'll see now. We'll go back to that a little bit later on. Just keep an eye on the circuit map now. We'll see which way that's going to go, because Aragonés says, remember, was half a second behind for pretty much all of the race behind Eresh. Now 85 seconds of the gap there. That's 1 minute and 25 seconds, but Aragonés is now having listed as completing the stop. It's just leaving the pit lane now as Prentice just about holds off Sharp going into the final chicane. Eresh, meanwhile, is going to retake the lead, I fancy, because Aragonés is just about getting up to speed. Eresh already up to speed on warmer tyres, and Eresh retains the lead with 18 minutes to go and actually increases it, doesn't he? That's a good couple of seconds, so that is an excellent job from the flawless German so far this season, with Eresh now resuming his customary position in the lead with 18 minutes to go. So Paul Vidler is 3 seconds behind Aragonés, and it was someone who had designs on maybe picking up the pieces for the win is probably going to have to settle for 3rd place, but that will do wonders in his personal battle with Luke Prentice in the championship. 3 points separate them, and this would put Vidler ahead of Prentice, with Prentice fighting gamely for 6th place. And I say fighting gamely because he's got Adam Sharp all over him once again going into Lecombe. The McLaren once again tries around the outside, but is shut out there by the Lamborghini before they get to the second part of the chicane, the left-hander, and there's going to be no need for defence here from Luke Prentice into Rivage there, because Sharp forced to settle in behind. Chris Gedman having dropped 5 seconds off the back of this in the round of pit stop. So Gedman there, still a factor, isn't he, for the top 6 if these two do come together, with these two being in party together and having a very good racing relationship together. It's going to be, accidents happen, but I don't see it with these two. They're two very experienced drivers, so it's just going to be a fight to the end, and maybe the scrap there might just drop them back to Chris Gedman. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead, as I'm not going to say it's been extinguished, but it's had a little bit of water poured over it, isn't it? Because Aragonés is there. He's now 3 seconds back, isn't he, from Eresh. Eresh there having put together robotic consistency throughout the pit lane phase, and Aragonés is there not being quite as perfect in the pit lane, I suspect, with Eresh being notoriously quick in the pits. I suspect that's what's done the damage for the Spaniard in his battle with the German. So Eresh now 3 seconds ahead, and maybe he might be able to relax and show the true pace of that Mustang. With Paul Vidler now 4 seconds back, and I think quite content to settle in for 3rd. And Fernando Ferreira now having dropped Josh Clayton Ferreira in 4th place. Another man who's been a bit of a nearly but not quite this season, as he's shown the pace to have a lot more wins and podiums, but has often made a bit of contact with Eresh, it must be said, in the middle part of the season. Ferreira there, a little bit more aggressive than Eresh. It's not always been to his benefit, but an impressive showing for 4th place so far for the Portuguese driver. is certainly a great way to end the season should he maintain it. Meanwhile, talking of maintaining it, here's Luke Prentice trying to maintain 6th position with Adam Sharp breathing all over him. Down the Kemble Straight they go. Sharp goes towards the outside once again as Prentice covers the inside. Goes around the outside. Has he got him? No, because Prentice just about gives him 1 car's width, but no more. And Sharp has to go right around the outside and try and make a silk purse out of a sow's ear around the outside there. You can't quite do it, but fear that this might be exactly to Luke's playbook, with the Lamborghini certainly very strong on the brakes on the inside and able to run him out as fair as possible through the chicane. Sharp there, not really much else that he can do. The McLaren not the fastest in the straight and not the quickest, or not the best on the brakes, so he's going to have to come up with something a bit different and maybe something a little bit surprising, which is very difficult to do when you've got the combined experience of these two. Now, through Fania they go, as Prentice has a little bit of a wobble, but nothing there to worry him too much in the yellow and green Lamborghini, with Sharp there trying to see if he can conjure a run maybe out of Stavolo. It's pretty much flat through here, so through Blanchimont, he's going to have to hope for a mistake through Blanchimont and maybe try and get him on the brakes around the outside, I would suspect, into the chicane. We're going through Blanchimont now. The McLaren does look a little bit more planted and a little bit more able through the corners, but the Lamborghini holding its own. A little bit of understeer, but he goes to the inside and Sharp's going to have to look at the outside, and he does not, rather wisely. But Luke does go deep, the Lamborghini, so this is an opportunity for Sharp if he can get a switchback out of there. I fear he can't, because I think Lamborghini's covered it off as well as he can, but Sharp now going towards the outside into last source. And is it going to be a switchback? He's going to be a brave man to try all the way around the outside there. He has done, but Luke has left him enough room, but has proven to be an obstacle just too much for the moment. He's now going to tuck into the slipstream here now. Cars running nose to tail as they go through towards Rouge, side by side very briefly. No, he isn't able to go through there, but over Radion now, as he tries to get back into the slipstream, and I think it's going to be the same old, with the Lamborghini going towards the inside and the McLaren heading towards the outside. Doesn't look like there's going to be an attempt here, but that's the thing about doing something a bit different. It did nearly come off for him, but yeah, he's going to have to work, even somebody as quick as Adam Sharp. He's going to have to work very hard to get past Luke Prentice there in the Lamborghini. He's going to have another go around the outside into the hairpin. Well, he might as well, mightn't you? Has he got the grip? Not quite. The Lamborghini proved to be an immovable object, but there's a little bit of contact and runs off the McLaren, and I think that's about as hard as it's going to get between those two. Don't think there was anything doing. I think it was just a bit of ACC physics, but yeah, the two drivers certainly rubbing his racing. Chris Gedman, I mentioned earlier that the battle might just go back towards him. He's gained a second in the last couple of laps on these, so with only, 6 laps to go, certainly he is a factor, isn't he, Chris Gedman? Now we can smell a top 6 if these two come together in a more direct fashion than before. Aragonis, meanwhile, has taken a second off of Eresh in the last couple of laps, so we'll keep an eye on that, with the Spaniard there starting to cruise up to the back of the German, with Vidler now dropping back in third, so we'll keep an eye on that a little bit later on. With a further battle, I can just see at the corner of my eye, for 9th place. 2 Porsches and a Mercedes. Starts together some sort of German car joke, doesn't it? But it's Marshall, 16 seconds off the back of Chris Gedman, who's gained a further second on the 2 in front. And it's Marshall, Brush-Tully and Tulloch. We'll try and catch that shortly, because Sharp's having another go at Luke Prentice. Here is Brush-Tully. Bit of contact, a little bit of bump drafting there. That might open the door for Tulloch in 11th place, as Brush-Tully has to back off a little bit through Blanchimont. Goes to the outside, the Canadian. And has he got too far? No, he hasn't. That is an excellent move there from Marcelin Brush-Tully. Really catches out Jordan Marshall. Marshall early on the brakes there, and the Frenchman is made to pay for it, and he surrenders 9th position now. Here's Andrew Tulloch. Is he going to have a run? at Marshall. I don't think he is. Thinks better of it because there's another car in the way going into last source. Marshall, though, isn't done, is he? Marshall is having another go, isn't he, at Brush Tully? But Brush Tully, I think, is going to get the job done just for the moment, with Marshall relying on Slipstream to have another go into well, that's an alternative route, isn't it, through Radion, but to have a go into the chicane at the top end, I think he's relying on Slipstream. Marshall, though, 0.4 of a second behind, that's not going to be enough, and Andrew Tulloch there is forced to sit patiently once again, kind of hoping that these two maybe cause further mischief, because I think he quite fancies a run at 9th position. Meanwhile, further battle is ahead, and that is Adam Sharp once again, staring at the back of a Lamborghini. They're 3 seconds now clear of Chris Gebman. Gebman in 8th position, certainly holding his own in the Porsche, car number 79, with the battle behind, meaning that he's got pretty much a free run, isn't he? He hasn't got to worry about anything behind, so he can just sort of run his race and pick up anything that might come his way. Aragona says 1.4 seconds, by the way, behind Airesh. We'll see what that gap is very shortly. It's 1.2. We'll go back to that towards the end of the race, because I fancy that might be a cracker, with Airesh starting to look a little bit more vulnerable. Fiddler, meanwhile, 6.5 seconds back. His race is run for the lead, but third position will do nicely, thank you very much. With Luke Prentice there now fighting with Adam Sharp. Sharp isn't going to be able to make a move here unless there's a further mistake, so we'll cut back to the battle for 9th, just depending on what happens here. The Lamborghini is, final of the race there, no issues, and Sharp is forced to sit behind once again. Brustelli, meanwhile, has gotten away from Marshall. I wonder if Marshall's carrying damage or isn't taking tires, because he's sinking very much into clutches of Andrew Tulloch. Andrew Tulloch, who will also have the Aston Martin of Trevor Mendes, who, as said earlier, had been a little bit slower than he had been before in the race, but he's certainly trying to prove that wrong, isn't he? Because he's in 12th place and he fancies a run at possibly a top 10. Tulloch, meanwhile, is sizing up the Frenchman Jordan Marshall. These two have battled a couple of times before. Marshall, the enthusiastic Frenchman in the Mercedes, has got his mitts on 10th position just at the moment, but Tulloch, they're using the Porsche's traction, might be able to get a run on Marshall going down the long straight. We're going to go back once again to the battle for 6th place, and Luke Prentice once again blocking his way in front of Adam Sharp. This must be so frustrating for the Englishman, because Sharp is in a quicker car and is possibly a little bit quicker around Spa than what Luke has been, but unfortunately with GT3 racing, possession is 9/10 of the law, and at the moment possession of 6th place is very much with Luke Prentice. Now, as we go towards the fight for the lead, because guess what? These two are back together again, going into the final corner. We've got 4 laps to go after this, I reckon, with 7.5 minutes to go, counting down. And Aragona says has designed on winning the race. He's not got quite so much time to do it, but that might just benefit him, because he might be able to catch Airesh Cole, although that is easier said than done. The German has been wheeled perfect, hasn't he, pretty much throughout the entire race. And Aragona says now with designs on the lead, as Airesh there doesn't look to be too flustered. In fact, Aragona says does miss the apex just a little bit, but the BMW's grunt plus the slipstream will probably drag him back into contention now. Down the hill they go, and it is going to be through a Rouge. Argonis is there having a look. That's an alternative route, isn't it? He's missed the corner there. He'll have a couple of those before he's penalised, I fancy. And Aragonis is there, not going to catch up to Airesh just at this moment in time. But let's see, because having caught up and now having done more than catch up is Adam Sharp. Adam Sharp there has relieved Luke Prentice of 6th position into the bus stop chicane. So finally the McLaren has got free of the Lamborghini. He's not going to get any further up the road, because it's 24 seconds between him and Josh Clayton. So Luke Prentice has finally been deposed from 6th position, and Adam Sharp there, it's been an almost race-long squabble, isn't it? Certainly for about a good half of the race. Adam Sharp has finally got his hands on 6th position. Luke Prentice there having put up a game fight in the Lamborghini that he says has been struggling around the Spa circuit. Certainly in practice he wasn't particularly happy. Chris Gebman now, well, I think he would rather that Luca had stayed ahead, because Chris Gebman now 3 seconds back. Don't think he'll be a factor for the top 6 now, but it's still a very impressive 8th position for the Flying Scotsman. Bruce Tully meanwhile has extended his lead over 10th place. Now Andrew Tulloch has gone past Jordan Marshall. Marshall now vulnerable to Mendes. Indeed, Trevor Mendes up into 11th place, and suddenly things are looking a bit rosier in the Mauritius Garden, because Jordan Marshall, for reasons I know not, has lost his rears completely, because that back end does not look very good on the Mercedes. I wonder if he didn't take tyres, because he's gone from very quickly 9th position to 12th position, and he could be under threat from the resurgent Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown, who was making moves earlier in the race to his detriment, and the Scotsman there in 13th position might just have a run at Marshall if his tyres continue to go the way they have. We haven't talked about this, but Marcel Basler has dropped to 14th. We never saw that, did we? With Basler having he would have run about as high as 7th or 8th earlier. Certainly if he'd have kept all 4 wheels pointing in the right direction every time, he would have been a factor for the top 6, wouldn't he? So Basler there in 14th, with Keller, another man to hit strife a little bit further back. So the 14 cars that you see that are on the lead lap. Speaking of the lead lap, to the lead battle. Aragonis is there around the outside, going into Lecombe. He's going to have to make it work around the outside, and he might just have it, because he eases Eresh out, but Eresh is having none of it. Now goes through Malmedy, gets it stopped just about the Ford Mustang, and now it's Eresh there on the inside. Aragonis is around the outside. The Spaniard in the BMW has just about kept his foot in it, and I fancy he might have the lead going through turn 9, the corner with no name. X Brussels, call it what you want. Eresh using all of the track and more to keep the position, going into Pouon. We'll see it eventually, and Eresh there, that's about as close as it's come, isn't it, for the German there in the lead, and he's certainly been made to work for this. Eresh there having just about, by fair means, retained the lead. This has been a bit of a generational battle for FRL 2025. We can't wait to see it, hopefully, in any end-of-season rounds. I'll be very interested to see what it looks like from both of these two drivers. Aragonis and Eresh putting on a real spectacle for the lead. We've had more passes for the lead here than we have in a Formula 1 season, with Aragonis now 0.3 of a second, a mammoth 0.3 of a second, it must be said, behind Eresh now, as he's getting in the slipstream, gaining through Blanchimont. Have to set it up well through Blanchimont now. The BMW looks planted. He's going to go to the outside. We've seen a move work here. We saw it earlier. Now, as he goes longer on the brakes, has he got it stopped? He has just about, and Eresh can't turn in. There's contact because he hit the sleeping policeman. But all drivers carry on. I think Aragonis has rather fairly let Eresh go. We've got 2 laps to go with 2.5 minutes on the clock, and Eresh there, that's about as close as these two have come to go into blows, and all's fair in the end, because I think Aragonis does the right thing by letting him go. But that was a sleeping policeman on the curb, has sent the BMW into the Ford, and that is the first warning between these two drivers. They both carry on, but Vidler now only 3.5 seconds behind when he was 7 a little bit earlier on. So, battle for the lead has finally come to blows, with Aragonis there now 1 second back. Eresh stretching his lead a little bit, as he's entitled to do, having been hit just a little bit by the Spaniard. No malice at all involved there. Two, hard racing drivers, but nothing more. 0.2 of a second already gained by Aragonis. And it kind of leaves him in a little bit of do or die, because we've got 1 lap to go after this. He's going to spend the rest of this lap catching back up to the Ford Mustang. I say that even though it's only a second back. These two not split by a lot in terms of pace, so he's going to have to really set it up and just concentrate on narrowing the gap until we get to the final lap. Aragonis is there. That BMW does look so aggressive through Pouon, doesn't it? It really does get the nose down and keep the car planted. It's a skill I wish I had, to be honest with you. Sitting in the commentary box for the one time only for this race, as we've got now Eresh through the chicane, through the Fania chicane, Piff Paff translates in English through now Stavolo, and I would fancy that gap is about half a second. So it's all about setup play for Aragonis, I fancy, because he's not really, even though he is 410, probably not close enough to launch an attack into the chicane, but he can certainly frighten Airesh, if that's possible, off the road. We are now going into the penultimate lap with Aragonis through Blanchimont. Is he going to have another little look? He probably won't need to do what he did earlier because he went so long on the brakes, but he is going for it around the outside. Is he going to get it stopped? I don't fancy he is, and Airesh is able to shut the door a bit and then gains a little bit on the exit. So Aragonis says there, half a second back. Yeah, I fancy he might have been a bit closer, but now he's got a little bit to do now to catch up. He's going to have to nail the exit of La Source as we go on to the final lap. BMW now in car 104. Aragonis fires himself off of La Source corner as the clock strikes 0. So this is going to be the final lap. He's in the slipstream through Rouge, now over the top at Radion. Aragonis now, this is possibly one of his last chances going into La Coum, and I don't think he's close enough, but he is in the slipstream, gaining, pulls out to the outside. Is he going to make it work? He's going to have to be supreme on the brakes. Airesh, we all remember, is a supreme driver, and he doesn't leave him an awful lot of room. They're side by side. He's going to have to get it stopped on the right-hander at Malmedy, which he does. Aragonis is now going to launch it round the outside, going into Rivage. This is a masterclass in battling from the pair of them. Side by side they go. They run each other wide. There's a little bit of rubbing and racing, and I think Aragonis has come up short there because Airesh is able to just get the drop on him through turn number 9. They both run wide on the run down to Pouon. Now, this is all about setup play once again from Aragonis. Keep the car to the inside, keep it tight, and see if you can gain on the Mustang, which is starting to struggle, isn't it, on its tyres, I fancy. Going into Fania now, not going to be an awful lot of doing there, but he does go to the inside. I fancy that might have tossed him more than it gained, as Aragonis now searching once again to try and see if he can frighten the German off the road. This is all it is now. Through Stavolo they go. Exits are key here, because if Airesh can get a good exit, and it does look like he's got a decent one, then he might not be under threat going down the straight and through Blanchimont into the final corner. Now, Aragonis has just got to hope that toe is big enough to give him a shot going into the final corner. Through Blanchimont they go in just a second as Gordon Brown receives a drive-through penalty on the last lap. That'll cost him nothing from 14th. As Aragonis now sets him up, goes to the outside as Airesh covers the inside. Aragonis is now round the outside. It's going to be side by side. Can he get it stopped there? He's not going to get much room. There's a little bit of contact. Final corner it is, and I think Aragonis has got him. It's a drag to the line here now. Aragonis says he's going to win it by 0.08 of a second. Airesh's perfect season is gone, and Aragonis says by 0.08 of a second will not be denied the Spaniard. Having started pole, he led none of the race until the end, and the Spaniard can be rightly delighted with that. Paul Fiddler has ended up 3rd place for Team England to take 5th place off of Luke Prentice in the championship. Fernando Ferreira is in 4th ahead of Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin, who strokes his way to 5th place. Adam Sharp, it's a wonderful 6th place it's going to be for Adam Sharp in the McLaren, now having fought for half the race with Luke Prentice, who will end up 7th, just 2 seconds off the back, with Chris Gebman driving for Estonia in the 79 Porsche to cross the line for an impressive 8th position. Marcelin Brustulli has earned 9th place, hasn't he, after a difficult opening laps, because Brustulli, while he qualified well, he has now raced well to recover up to 9th place. Trevor Mendes, meanwhile, has relieved Andrew Tulloch of 10th place. We'll see that possibly a little bit later on, but it's Brustulli who's ended up 9th, with Mendes in 10th, as Tulloch has got the Porsche finishing disease that appears to have afflicted him throughout most of this last third of the season. It's Marshall who's run out of tyres to finish in 12th position, Jordan Marcel, but he is going to hold off Marcel Basler in the 13th, with Gordon Brown with an 80-second penalty after a drive-through that was awarded to the Scotsman a little bit, late on it was. He does test out the barriers and indeed the strength of Chris Gebman's Porsche. Christian Keller, meanwhile, in 15th, 2 laps behind in 15th in the Lamborghini. We never saw what happened to him. in the 179 Lamborghinis. He's the last of those to come around, but car 112 is listed as lead. That's FRL just to go for another lap. Whatever he realises the race is finished. Christian Keller there to come around and finish the race now, as he does complete the order. The Hungarian, all credit to him for carrying on, because Montero, Gonzalez, Gabino, Davies and Caruana all retired, and a finish of 0.08 of a second. I think we're glad we caught this one as a one-off, aren't we? Because Eresh and Aragonis has put on a real treat to end this mammoth season. It's been 6 months of toil and slog for the admin, 6 months of toil and slog for the drivers, and it was a pleasure to call the final race of the season Thursday night. There will be some off-season action, no doubt, coming forwards. And just a quick reminder that there is still one race to go for both the Sunday Sprint, which you can catch with me and Greg from just before 8 o'clock, and on Tuesday, the Taco Tuesday finale, which is a 75-minute race. That is also on. That's also to finish the season next season at Barcelona, and with further comments to be left in the YouTube. You know, if you do want to get involved in that, we'll reply to you. And I think that's it. So we're at 11:45 UK time. I've been Jack Prentice. It's been an absolute pleasure to call this final race of the season, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks' time with no doubt something just as exciting. Cheerio.